Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. Hope you all are doing well. It is a Thursday evening. We are nearly at the weekend. Is anybody still buzzing after Monday night's fantastic result and performance against Brighton at the Amex Stadium? I know for sure I am. I said it yesterday during our live game review. I'm holding on to every bit of enjoyment, every bit of excitement, every bit of positivity I can possibly hold on to from that result on Monday night, especially given we've got Manchester City on Sunday, which will be an extremely difficult game of football, one that Everton can get something out of. I want to stress that it's not an impossibility that Everton get a result on Sunday. Obviously, it will be incredibly difficult given Manchester City are an absolutely fantastic side. They've just managed to get themselves a point at the Bernabeu, of course, in the first leg of the Champions League semi-final, which leaves them in a very, very good situation going into the second leg. And they, of course, are on course for a third consecutive Premier League on the bounce now, sixth in 5 years or something silly like that. They are absolutely formidable at this time of year, Manchester City, and have been formidable at this time of year for the last 4, 5, 6 seasons on the bounce. Not to mention, of course, that they have signed a striker who could possibly break every single record that there is to break in the Premier League. He's already broken many of them so far this season, including, the amount of goals scored in a single Premier League season. Erling Haaland, of course, we are talking about. And, there's many other reasons as to why this game on Sunday will be extremely difficult for Sean Dyche and for Everton. But it is not impossible. It isn't impossible. This same Everton side managed to go to the Etihad earlier on this season and pick up a point, and they were managed by a manager who wasn't as good and as experienced as Sean Dyche, and we hadn't just come off the back of a fantastic result and a big win. We were in a really, really bad run of form, and we all sat there on New Year's Eve, I think pretty much with our, the pillow in front of our face, thinking we were going to see an absolute, an absolute battering of our football club, and that wasn't the case. We managed to get a really good point. We defended really, really well. When we attacked with purpose, and, very similar to the game against Brighton, other than, obviously we didn't score 5 goals, and Manchester City weren't quite as bad as what Brighton were on Monday night. So it is a difficult game. It will be a difficult game. It's one that Everton can certainly get something out of, and I was going to sit down today and talk about the possibility of Everton getting a result on Sunday and why it isn't impossible to suggest that Everton will get something. But I thought, you know what, we'll leave that for tomorrow. We will be doing the live game preview to this game tomorrow, of course, after we've heard from Sean Dyche in his pre-game press conference. So I thought, no, do you know what, we'll leave that until tomorrow. And today we'll just go over some of the latest Everton news and rumours. If I am a little bit sniffly, if I am a little bit sound a little bit like I'm talking through my nose, it's because the hay fever and pollen count, I believe, is a little bit high today where I live. So yeah, basically I'm full of cold, some would say. So I apologise about that one. But yeah, we're going to talk about the latest Everton news, including news of a possible return for Colombian playmaker James Rodriguez. The reason I smiled at that is because the thought of James Rodriguez returning to Everton is one that excites me massively, but one that also is extremely unlikely to happen. But nevertheless, the link is there and we'll talk about it, as well as a link to Liverpool midfielder James Milner, which again makes me smile for different reasons, purely because obviously he is currently a Liverpool player, and I can't see a current Liverpool player joining this Everton team, especially not in this day and age. Would James Milner come in and do a good job for Everton? Possibly. Is the other options? Definitely. Is he likely to come to Everton? Absolutely not, and we'll go through that as well. But let's start with the James Rodriguez one, because this is one that I think certainly would have got a lot of people excited when they first read the news. And this was released a couple of days ago, just before the game against Brighton, and it is coming from Christian Martin, who is a broadcaster in Argentina and across the UK as well. Europe and America's Tonios Direct TV. So again, he's got 500,000 followers on his Twitter account. So clearly somebody that across the world is viewed as at some level a reliable journalist, considering the following that he has managed to amass. And it was via El Futbolero Colombia, who I believe are a Colombian football page and Colombian football publication. And he has said that Everton, Crystal Palace and Bournemouth have all made inquiries via intermediaries on the possibility of signing James Rodriguez. So I believe the article was written Everton and other Premier League clubs. This one states Crystal Palace and Bournemouth, and I think there were some other clubs named in the actual article as well. Yeah. James Rodriguez, what a time that was. James Rodriguez playing for Everton Football Club. I'm still not completely convinced that whole season happened. Obviously, it was the COVID season. We never got to see James Rodriguez live in the flesh unless you were at Manchester United for a friendly, in which you would have seen him for 20 minutes or whatever he played, or you were lucky enough to be in Florida for the Florida Cup. Other than that, the majority of us never actually got to see James Rodriguez play football in the flesh for Everton. The couple of games that were attendable during that season, he was out injured for. He was here for that season, and then obviously he left the following summer following the appointment of Rafael Benitez, who practically made his stance fairly early into his Everton career that James Rodriguez wasn't welcome. And the reasoning for that is still up in the air, isn't it? To be honest, listen, you read in some stories that James Rodriguez wasn't particularly interested in playing for Everton, and the minute that Carlo Ancelotti left the football club and Rafa Benitez come in, he practically wanted out. You hear in other stories that was never the case, and James Rodriguez was fully committed to playing for Everton, and it was Rafael Benitez that decided that he didn't want him, and therefore he was going to completely freeze him out of the equation. You hear in other stories that his wage was simply too much and too crippling for Everton. I think that one probably makes the most sense given the financial situation we're in now, and given the fact that summer that James Rodriguez left the football club, Everton only spent £1.5 million across the whole summer because of financial difficulties. We all knew that the club had spent quite big the season before, bringing in Abdoulaye Doucouré, Alan, and obviously James Rodriguez coming in on a fairly healthy wage, shall we say, to try and back Carlo Ancelotti into taking this Everton team into Europe. That, of course, at one point in the season was looking like an absolute cert when we were sitting second on Boxing Day, but of course as the season panned out and Everton dropped further and further down the table, it became quite clear that wasn't going to happen. So yeah, as I said, it very, very much feels like a bit of a fever dream, the whole James Rodriguez thing, doesn't it? Did it actually really happen, or was it all just part of a television show that we all watched when we were, locked up in our houses with nothing better to do? No, obviously I'm being a little bit pedantic there. Of course he played for Everton, and of course, there were times at the beginning of that season where we were all pinching ourselves thinking, how have we managed to bring in James Rodriguez to play for this football club? And I remember the game against Brighton at Goodison Park, he was absolutely phenomenal. I remember the goal against Leicester, the game against West Brom when he really sort of announced himself on the scene, Manchester United away. There were times in that season where his quality really shone through. The Merseyside derby at Anfield was a big one as well. But of course, there were other times in that season where he wasn't available. He was out with injury. He was, in for one game and out for five, that type of situation. We knew he struggled with his injuries. We knew that, he was a player that notoriously struggled with his injuries, because if he didn't, he wouldn't be at Everton. Bit of a similar situation with Yerry Mina. I think if Yerry Mina was constantly injury-free, he wouldn't be an Everton player because he's just that good. And yeah, as I said, he obviously come into the football club under the sort of romance of Carlo Ancelotti and the relationship he had with Carlo Ancelotti. That romance, built with the Evertonians because of just how good of a footballer he is. I still... He's not my favourite Everton player to ever play for Everton for numerous reasons. One, because he wasn't here very long. Two, because I never actually seen him in the flesh. And three, because we never really built that relationship with him. But I still do think he was the greatest player in terms of technically, the greatest player I've ever witnessed in an Everton shirt, in terms of his technical ability, what he could do with the ball, just how special he was. And in that team, when you had Richarlison firing on all cylinders, Dominic Calvert-Lewin firing on all cylinders, we had other creators in there, Luca Dean, Gylfi Sigurdsson, etc. He really did shine when he was fit and when he was available. But that unfortunately wasn't very often. And as much as I think some of us may like the fairy tale of a James Rodriguez return, obviously the football club has changed dramatically in the 3 years that James Rodriguez, or the 2 years, sorry, that James Rodriguez has been away from it. Again, it's quite baffling to actually think about and actually sort of analyse and delve into how much Everton has changed over the course of those last 2 years. It's not even been 2 years since James Rodriguez left Everton Football Club. He left Everton Football Club, I believe, in 2021, in the summer of 2021, and we're not even in the summer of 2023. And within those 2 years, 3 years since he joined the football club, within those 3 years, Everton have gone from a side with Carlo Ancelotti, who were really seemingly making a push towards those European places, just when we all thought we'd got it right with the manager, bringing in an experienced manager, somebody that knew what he was doing, somebody with European pedigree better than anyone else, really one of the top 5 managers in world football, and Everton had managed to snap him up. We'd brought in James Rodriguez, who of course, as I said, was a player that in terms of his quality, we'd not seen for a long time at the football club. Alan come in, who looked dependable. Decore come in, somebody we'd wanted for a while, and 3 years later, less than 3 years later, we've gone from that to, arguably the worst decision any Premier League owner has made in the last however many years in terms of replacing said manager with Rafael Benitez, who was a complete disaster. I mean, D says, I've heard Cam slam Everton spending on past their veterans on the main reason Everton are in relegation battles. I'm now praising it. I'm not praising it at all. I'm just stating in terms of his quality, he was one of, if not the best player I've ever seen in an Everton shirt. I haven't finished my point yet, so if you'd wait for me to finish my point, you'll hear where I'm coming from with my opinion. We went from that to, as I said, one of the most baffling decisions I've ever witnessed as an Evertonian in terms of bringing in ex-Liverpool manager Rafael Benitez. That obviously failed massively. We then tried to bring in Frank Lampard to shore up the ship. He did in terms of building a relationship with the fans, but in terms of his managerial ability, he wasn't good enough. We then brought Sean Dyche into the football club. In 3 years, we've gone from Carlo Ancelotti to Sean Dyche, and I don't mean that as a disrespect to Sean Dyche, and in reality Sean Dyche is probably a more suited manager to Everton Football Club and probably more what we need at this moment. In fact, he definitely is more what we need at this moment than Carlo Ancelotti. But if you'd have said to any of us 3 years ago when Carlo would come in and we were signing James Rodriguez, in 3 years you'll have Sean Dyche, I don't think many of us would have been particularly happy or particularly I don't think many of us would have said, yeah, I see that coming. It would have come as quite a big surprise. Financially, obviously, Everton are in a much different position, and in terms of the league table, we've gone from what we all thought was a real push for Europe and being second on Boxing Day and being first for the opening 7 games of the season to being in our second consecutive relegation battle and really, really struggling to stay in this division. And that is one of the many reasons as to why James Rodriguez will not return to Everton. I read a couple of weeks ago that his contract with Olympiacos, I believe it was, had basically been ripped up and he'd been allowed to leave on a free transfer. And as soon as I read that rumour, I thought, I was pretty... I remember sitting there and thinking, I can see him being linked with a return back to Everton. Probably because it makes for good reading. There'll have been a lot of Evertonians that will have clicked on that article and read those tweets and engaged with them because of the fact that there would be an initial bit of excitement surrounding James Rodriguez. And I mean, we're talking, this article was released before the game against Brighton, so we hadn't just beaten Brighton 5-1. We weren't in, we hadn't just come off the back of a really good result. We were, however many games in the Premier League without a win. We were in really bad position and we were staring down the battle of relegation. And the moment you all of a sudden put something out of, a world-class, in terms of his talent, a world-class playmaker who once played for the football club could return, yes, his wages, yes, his injury problems, yes, the questions surrounding his attitude all come into the thinking, but they come into the thinking beyond the, oh my God, imagine what a fully fit James Rodriguez, even for 2 games, could do for Everton's chances of survival. So the moment I read it, I thought, yeah, it seems like a bit of lazy journalism, and it probably also seems like his agent or his team, trying to put his name out there to Premier League clubs and trying to sort of throw the bait out to see if anybody will snap, given he is a free transfer. He would cost nothing in terms of his transfer fee, and he would be available to come in now, I believe, and have an impact on the remaining few games of the season. I believe that to be the case. I could be wrong on that one, but he'd certainly be able to come in for no transfer fee. The reality of the situation is James Rodriguez is not going to return to Everton for many reasons. One being that, as I've just said, Everton are a very, very different side and in a very, very different situation to the one they were in when he first joined. He hasn't got a previous relationship with Sean Dyche like he did with Carlo Ancelotti, and I do firmly believe that had Carlo Ancelotti not being the Everton manager, even though we would have still been challenging for Europe, or certainly that would have been the aim, even though we would have still had a little bit of money to spend, James Rodriguez would not have been an Everton player if Carlo Ancelotti was not here. He's admitted that himself. So he's not going to return now that Carlo Ancelotti isn't here. You add that to the fact that his wages were astronomical and completely through the roof, and probably part and parcel of the reasons to why we're in such a financial mess at the moment. And all of that on top of his injury problems and the fact that, it just, for as much as if you were to say to me, Cam, you can have James Rodriguez for the final 3 games of the season and then he leaves again in the summer and you don't get him back, I probably would take it, because he is better than anything that we've got in terms of the quality and his quality on the ball and his ability on a football pitch. That's just simple. Nobody can disagree with that. But, if you were to say, right, you've got to sign him on a 2-year contract, his wage is going to be, 180, 190 grand a week or whatever it was when he was here the first time. He's going to have an injury issue every 5 minutes. He's hardly going to play, etc., etc. Then that's when you start to, you start to look at the actual sort of, the realistic element of it, rather than just looking at the player for his quality and for his ability. So yeah, I thought this was interesting because ultimately, look, it's not every day you're linked with a Colombian international and somebody that, of course, once played for the football club. But we will not see James Rodriguez back at Everton Football Club. We just won't. It's as simple as that, and that's the right decision as well. It's the right decision for that, for the financial situation. It's the right decision for what we should be trying to build for the future. And I understand why the rumour come out, and I understand why people would have maybe been slightly excited by it. But, when you actually look at it and look at what it would mean, it would be completely the wrong decision. But I don't even know why we're discussing it, because it's never going to happen. Even if I sat here and said it'd be amazing, it'd be great, and even if everybody in the comments said, get him back, it'd be boss, it'd be brilliant, it isn't going to happen. It isn't going to happen. If you were to ask me now, Cam, he's on a free transfer, he's not got a club, so you could have him now and he'll play the next 3 games, then I'd have him back. I would. I don't care what anybody says, I'd have him back. As long as it wouldn't cripple us financially, which it probably would, I'd have him back, because, ultimately we haven't got anybody of his quality, and his quality can be the difference between winning and losing a game. But that's probably not likely, and even if it was likely, it's not going to happen anyway. So I thought it was interesting, certainly an interesting point, and took me back sort of mentally to those times of James Rodriguez and Carlo Ancelotti, and when Everton were actually a little bit good at football, and we actually had hope that we could achieve something. Obviously we didn't achieve something, but there was at least hope that we could achieve something there. But yeah, as I said, those days are certainly gone. There's definitely a different direction to the football club, and I think the James Rodriguez transfer, along with a couple of other transfers that were made during that era, probably contribute to the reason that we're in such a bad financial situation now. And yeah, it isn't going to happen. Even if it made the most sense in the world, it isn't going to happen. So there's very little point in talking too much into it. Another player that Everton have been linked with that we aren't going to sign, and that equally has baffled my head, is Liverpool midfielder James Milner. This is coming from Sportsbeat O'Rourke, who is a football correspondent for Footy Insider 247, and he said Everton made a late move to try and sign Liverpool midfielder James Milner. The 37-year-old rejected Everton's offer in favour of joining Brighton. Now, listen, Footy Insider have had previous of getting things extremely wrong. However, Pete O'Rourke has had previous of getting things right and being sort of one of the first to be spot on about sackings or appointments or things like that. You know, I've seen Pete O'Rourke tweet some breaking information that has actually been right before anybody else has. I'm not particularly bothered whether or not this is right or wrong. I'm not particularly bothered whether or not Everton did try and sign James Milner or whether or not Everton didn't sign James Milner. I think it would be a little bit baffling to think that Everton would try and sign a Liverpool player or a soon-to-be former Liverpool player. And I know some people might say, listen, Cam, if it's the right player, if he's the right profile, then why does it matter who he's played for? And whilst I understand that, I also understand that, you know, you have to look at the stuff with Rafael Benitez, and I know some people will say, well, Conor Cody played for Liverpool. Conor Cody played for Liverpool a long time ago, and Conor Cody has since had, you know, quite a strong career at Wolves and an established career at Wolves, and you know, although he might have been a Liverpool fan growing up, he's very comfortable admitting that, he's very comfortable accepting that, and he's accepted that. He said multiple times, I'm now a Blue and I'll do anything for this football club, etc, etc. James Milner's a different situation. One, he hasn't come from Everton to Liverpool to Everton, and two, he's at an age and plays in a position that I'm not quite convinced Everton are desperate to go out and sign. Now, that's not me saying, do we not need another midfielder, because yeah, we probably do need another midfielder. Could we do with his experience? Could we do with his level head? Yeah, we probably could. But again, it would be one of them that if he played for Fulham or if he played for Arsenal, let's say, and we were linked with him, and let's say we signed him and he was coming from Arsenal and not Liverpool, I wouldn't particularly be over the moon and I wouldn't particularly be gutted. And if we were linked with him and he played for Arsenal and we didn't sign him, I'd feel the same. I wouldn't be particularly over the moon and I wouldn't particularly be gutted. You know, he's choosing to sign for Brighton, and that's not a strange decision given his alliances with Liverpool, and also given the fact that Brighton are in a much better position than what Everton are at the moment in terms of their league position, and obviously in terms of their guaranteed future in the Premier League, obviously more so than Everton's. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. I'm not quite sure who at Everton Football Club wants to sign James Milner and why they want to sign James Milner. I think Everton's transfer goal should be quite clear in the summer, and that is to go out and bring in another striker, something that Everton have failed to do, and that still could see us get relegated. By the way, we said it yesterday in the review, we're not out of this relegation battle despite what was a fantastic win on Monday night. It doesn't mean that we're completely away from it. You know, and I know some people can say, well, Everton can still have a goal of getting a striker, and it doesn't mean you can't sign players in other positions. I don't really want to see Everton being linked with central midfielders. I don't really want to see Everton being linked with, you know, right backs or centre backs at the moment. I want to see Everton linked with strikers. I want to see Everton linked with players that we know we need to come in and improve this team. And if Everton stay in the Premier League this season, we can't afford to have another summer like last summer where we lose a key player, for example, or even if we don't lose a key player, but we don't go out and replace those goals. And James Milner isn't going to bring goals to this team. Yes, he'd bring experience. Yes, he'd bring a level edge. Yes, he'd bring, you know, a bit of know-how in tough moments and in big games, but he ain't going to bring goals. I can't remember the last time he actually scored, and if he's actually scored that many for Liverpool over the years that he's been there. So, yeah, again, one that probably is complete and utter nonsense, and one that probably was just put out there to get some clicks and to receive some attention. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting one. I certainly thought it was an interesting situation. And then I want to finish up before we jump into the live comments by talking about Conor Cody and Jarrad Branthwaite. Jarrad Branthwaite, of course, currently on loan at PSV in the Dutch League, having a really, really, really good season. Just won their cup with PSV, played in that game as well, scored a few goals recently for PSV. He's having a really, really solid season in the Dutch League, and it's obviously raising the questions as to whether or not Jarrad Branthwaite should A, return to Everton and be kept at the football club, pardon me, and B, not only be kept at the football club, but also be given an opportunity to start games and to be one of our starting centre-backs, you know, going into next season. Sorry, bear with me 2 seconds. I've just had a phone call from my insurance company, which was a little bit strange. Yeah, listen, this is obviously a difficult one and a conversation that maybe we should be looking to have, in the summer, and one that I'm sure we'll definitely have again in the summer, but one that I thought we could touch on now. I think, firstly, it goes without saying that Jared Branthwaite has had a fantastic season in the Dutch League and will almost certainly have caught the attention of PSV in terms of them wanting to sign him on a permanent deal, and probably caught the attention of numerous other clubs around Europe as well. It does have to be said that the Dutch League is much different to the Premier League, and the level is much different, and the quality is much different, and the ability of players in the Dutch League is significantly lower generally than players in the Premier League. Does that mean that Jared Branthwaite won't be good enough to come back to the Premier League and do a job? Absolutely not. But what it does mean is that there is doubt there. There is doubt. It's very, very easy to say, this is a non-conversation, Cam. You keep him and you start him every week next season. But just because he's had a good season in the Premier League does not necessarily mean that he is guaranteed to come in, and have a good season in the Premier League next season. Now, obviously, that is me assuming Everton will be in the Premier League next season. If Everton in the Championship, then it's a different conversation entirely. But Everton have got one of two options, I think, with Jared Branthwaite. One is to sell him, and the other is to start him every week. I don't really think Jared Branthwaite is going to be happy returning to Everton and sitting on the bench every week. And I also don't think it makes much sense to bring him back and then loan him back out, especially if there's offers on the table. Because if you loan him back out, you're pretty much accepting that you don't want him to, there's no future for him, or certainly, near future for him in the team. And B, if you loan him back out and he goes to, I don't know, the German league or the French league, and he doesn't have quite as good of a season, then you might never get the offer that would be on the table now for him again, and therefore you'd lose out on that money. So, two options Everton have got in terms of Jared. One is to sell for whatever price we get. Now, Everton could be offered £20 million for Jared Branthwaite in the summer, £20 million, £25 million for Jared Branthwaite in the summer, which of course would significantly improve our financial situation and put us in a much better position. Or you have that faith in him, you have that belief in him, and you effectively say, listen, I think you've done a great job there. We want you to be one of our starting centre-backs next season. Now, the centre-back position next season is, of course, up in the air a little bit. We are under the assumption that we will be without Yerry Mina because his contract expires this summer, and I just simply cannot see Everton giving him a new deal on the basis of his injury record, on the basis of his, his wage, etc., etc. And B, the Conor Cody situation. It's been sort of quite widely known that Conor Cody has got a release clause of around £4 or £5 million, something within that region. And I would assume, and I say assume because I don't know Conor, I don't speak to Conor, I don't know anybody within Everton Football Club or speak to, but I would assume that Conor Cody would be happy to remain at Everton, even with the lack of game time. He's recently done a bit of a post on social media with the PFA about his coaching badges and wanting to do his coaching badges, and I just think Everton are closer to home. He probably enjoys the experience a little bit more. If he's got any aspirations of playing first team football, then maybe that isn't the case, but from what I gather, I still think Conor Cody would happily stay at Everton if offered the chance. So, the decision is you either sign Conor Cody, and if you do sign Conor Cody, then does that put Jared Branthwaite further down the pecking order, or does Conor Cody remain in the position that he's in now, i.e. not starting games of football for Everton, and Jared Branthwaite comes in and directly replaces Yerry Mina, or you don't sign Conor Cody and Branthwaite comes back and becomes the number one. In terms of Jared Branthwaite, I do think we only have those two options. You either sell him or you start him. And there's risks to both. Of course, the risk to selling him is that you sell him for probably between 20-25 million and he goes on and becomes a really, really good player, and you're sitting there thinking, why didn't we keep him? The risk to keeping him is you keep him, you play him in the Premier League, and he struggles, he's not quite as ready as we thought he was, and then obviously it becomes evident he's not, he's not good enough. You remove him, and then you don't end up getting that bid that maybe was on the table before. And then people say, we should have took the money when Ajax offered it. Personally, for me, I think this is why there's certain people at Everton Football Club that are paid a lot of money to make these decisions. Somebody at the football club, somebody in the scouting team, somebody in the recruitment team is going to have to sit down and make the decision, probably Kevin Thelwell, on whether or not Jared Branthwaite is good enough, and they will have to live with that decision. If he leaves the football club and then becomes a £60 million player in the next 2 years and we only get 20 million for him, then that would prove to be the wrong decision. If he stays and he ends up not being quite good enough, then that would be the wrong decision. And that's why there's certain people at this football club that are paid a ridiculous amount of money. I'm going to be honest, I haven't seen too much of him at Ajax to suggest that I believe he'll be ready. And even if I had watched them, in every week at Ajax, it still wouldn't mean that I was convinced he was ready to be a Premier League footballer. So I can't really comment, but what I would say is I think if Everton receive a bid of £25 million for the player that's only had sporadic experience in the Premier League, I think that money would be money that Everton just simply couldn't turn down given the financial situation that we're in. But if they were to turn it down, then Jared Branthwaite has to be one of the two centre-backs next season, probably next to James Tarkowski, which could really work because you've got Branthwaite there, who's young and up-and-coming and learning his trade, and you've got Tarkowski there, who's very much experienced and could teach Jared Branthwaite a lot. But as I said, that's certainly a question for the summer and a question for when Jared Branthwaite returns and when we start to see the rumours about what's going to happen with his future, because we will, once the season is over and when the summer transfer window opens, we'll start to hear a lot of rumours about Jared Branthwaite and where he's going to be playing his football next season. Ted says Cammy's at PSV. Did I say Ajax? Sorry, PSV I meant. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to leave it there. There you go. Let us know your thoughts on everything we have spoken about. Let us know your thoughts on James Rodriguez. Even if he wasn't returned, even if he wasn't to return, do you still like him? Let us know your thoughts on James Milner if you want, and let us know your thoughts on the Jared Branthwaite situation. We are going to leave it there. If you have enjoyed it, please hit the like button. We will be back tomorrow with the game preview to the Premier League fixture against Manchester City on Sunday, so don't forget to look out for that one. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. If you've enjoyed it, leave a like. Nice one for watching, and we'll see you later.